Wow, we're going to have so much fun today. I'm going to show you how simple it is to use oil paint markers to paint like this. So this is actually a painting done with oil paint markers, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you can actually take an oil paint marker and not only can you mark with it like these little dots and lines, but you can also paint with it. And that's simply by taking the colors and blending them together. We blend them together with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, the same thing that you would use if you were oil painting. But I find that working with the oil paint markers is just much neater. And here, for instance, is the odorless mineral spirits that I usually use with them, but any oil paint medium, which is a mineral spirits, will work. Oh, there she is, Salmon's girl. Right, LOL. About the technology. Yes. I'm so glad I got the technology working. So today we're going to be using something called a 4Artist marker from Pebeo. And after the workshop, if you're on Whatnot, I will be using, or I will be having an auction of some of the markers that are brand new. I found somebody on Whatnot that had a whole bunch of these 4Artist markers that they were selling. They didn't really know what they were or how to use them, which is what I'm going to show you in this workshop tonight. Um, and they were willing to sell them to me for a good price so that I can offer them to you for a little bit of a discount than what you would get if you were trying to buy them online. Ooh, I just made myself a cup of coffee before coming on, so excuse me just one second. Mm, yummy. Okay, let me make sure I've got my chat going on over here. Yep, okay, I have the chat up on YouTube, yay. And I have the chat up. Hey, Foxhound, welcome in, welcome in. Yes, coffee, Salmon's girl, coffee. Coffee, I gotta have my coffee. This is a Starbucks mug that I got at my church. So I only paid like a dollar or two for it. And it has a lid, so it's easy to travel with. It's awesome. Hey, Becky Huslander, welcome in, welcome in. Today, Becky, since you weren't here earlier, I'm going to be showing you how to use oil paint markers, so something like this, to paint with not only the dots and the lines that you see here, but also all this blended background. I just used the blue, the yellow, and the white. Let me show you the blue, the yellow, and the white of these markers, and that's how I got that incredible green background and all the shading that I did in here. I love doing the spatter. And the nice thing about this oil paint that's in here is it's very fluid. So you can spatter with it like this, as well as use a brush. And it's beautiful for blending. So I can't wait to, get into that with you. But first, I'm going to show you a couple of the things that you can do with them. Let me adjust my camera down a little bit there. There we go. So let me show you some of the stuff besides this painting, which is going to be the subject of today's workshop. I wanted to show you some of the other possibilities. Oops. Okay, then. I have falling paintings here. There we go. This is a lotus flower that I did, and you can see the line work here. But also I went in this area and I did a lot of blending with my brush. So that's the beautiful thing, is you don't have to just use it as line from the marker. You can also do a bunch of blending in the colors and get your various shades and tints with it, which is what I think is fabulous. And the cool thing is, especially if you're traveling, because I've traveled with these markers, you're traveling with your oil paint like this, and it's so easy to pump it out and use it. It's just phenomenal. If you like the look of something that has more strokes to it, often if you use the acrylic paint, you'll find you don't always have that same stroke look or smooth look that you can get with oil paint. And this paint actually is quite shiny. I'm trying to see if you can see the shininess of it, but the paint itself has a shiny finish to it, which I think is awesome. And that's different from an acrylic marker, that most of the time an acrylic marker will look matte when you are finished with it. Now this is that same piece, but it is in a different color. So I did this design so that it would be able to be thought of both as a succulent, like here, um, so a cactus type of plant, or that it could be thought of as a, if you did it in other colors, it could come up looking kind of like a lotus. So I like my designs, if they can, to do double duty. Oh, but this one is not finished yet, but you can see that I'm building up the blends here and over here. And I was able to put the lines in first so that I could follow along with the design and just sort of fill it in. And then I can go back and add the lines in here with the marker, and then really make the line more bold after the fact. Hey there, Junk Collector and Kimber Bird, welcome in. And Crystal Clear, thank you for popping in. I am teaching an art lesson today on using oil paint markers to paint with, more than just as a marker, but also as a convenient paint. Now, there are many ways that I use these markers, not just the typical painterly way I just showed you. This is some of my mixed media artwork. And right here, do you see that silver right there? That silver like scribble and line work here is done with the silver version of the marker. And the silver is like a chrome. It's a beautiful chrome finish. And so that's what you're seeing here. And a little bit more up here, some scribbles with it. So I like to put it over top of artwork that I've already started. So these markers, because they are oil paint, you shouldn't put them directly onto paper, because eventually it can eat away at the paper, because the solvents that are in here to keep the oil paint fluid. So the better thing to do is to be sure that you've coated your paper, or you're using a paper or a surface that has some sort of coating on it where it's non-porous. That's the best way to use these, on a non-porous surface. Now, I have used them on cement outside and that kind of thing. So yes, they do have applications where you can use these markers outside because they're very durable. The paint is super durable. What I did was I took the black, let me find the black one for you. I took the black one and I used it for the numbers on my mailbox outside. I had like a cement mailbox, and but it'll also work on metal. And so I needed to fix the numbers that were on my mailbox. And I used this marker, and I'm telling you, like 2 years later, it still looked nice and black. So that's another application that you can do with it. Let me get a little bit of water, because you can hear there, I have a little frog in my throat. Okay, so that is using it on like cement. Another thing you can do, of course, a canvas like where this painting is on, canvas comes with this white finish. A typical canvas, like a piece of cloth, doesn't have sealant on it, and it needs to be sealed before you work with these paints on it. But if you're buying a canvas from a shop or someone on whatnot, and they have the finish on it already, they're white like this, that means that it already has a sealed surface to it, and it's non-porous at that point, and you can use it on that. With this paper, I had already put a bunch of acrylic paint and acrylic mediums, so it was already sealed, and that way I was able to go right over top of it with these markers. Um, Now, I like to use the markers on texture when I'm doing artwork because it really brings out the effect of the texture. So this is an example of that. I love using the silver because it looks like chrome, but what you're seeing there is black texture gel, and then on top of the black texture is the marker. So it really picks up that texture. And this is what the texture looks like before there's anything put on it. And this is paper. So of course I had the whole paper covered in acrylic paint first to seal the paper, and then put some sand medium on it. And I'm going to go over that sand medium with the markers to get this sort of highlighting effect of the texture. All right. Now, another kind of surface, which some of you may or may not be aware of, there are some various types of what are called stone paper and plastic papers out there. And this is Yupo paper. So you may have heard of Yupo paper, you may not have, but if you have not, Yupo paper is actually 100%, is it polypropylene? So 100% polypropylene, that means it's a plastic. And I love this paper. This happens to be the heavy version of it, and it comes in like a bright white. So this is the bright white, but it also comes in a translucent, and it has a very smooth surface, plus it's plastic. So it is already sealed, and that's why a lot of people like to do alcohol inks, and you can also do these oil markers on top of this Yupo paper. So that's YUPO. It works great. So this is a piece that I started on the Yupo paper with other paints in the background. And then you can see the silver and the turquoise color right here of these oil paint markers just going right on top of it. And I made little dots, and this one's in process. I'm messing around with it. Now, another cool thing is that you can use these markers over top of resin. So if you do any resin work, this is an example of a painting that I'm working on, and I have a piece of resin here that I embedded in the painting. So this is a liquid oil paint, a different kind of liquid oil paint that comes in a jar, and it has a very smooth, shiny, sealed surface. And so I can use these oil paint markers both on the resin as well as using it on the sealed surface of the liquid oil paints. And this is an example of a piece that has resin on it, and I've been doing collage in the background. So there are my postage stamps that I like to do, and other ephemera, which you can purchase tons of ephemera, right? We have great ephemera sellers on Whatnot. So if you're on YouTube and you are interested in picking up some amazing ephemera, I encourage you to use the QR code at the top of your screen on YouTube, or go into the description and you can click on there, and that will pop you over to my channel on YouTube. I'm sorry, on Whatnot. And the nice thing is, if you come over to Whatnot and you join from YouTube and you're not already on Whatnot, you will be able to get some money from Whatnot to be able to buy things. So it's but I highly recommend the ephemera sellers that are on Whatnot. And there is someone who's been in the stream. Her handle on Whatnot is Salmon's Girl. So it's SALMONS_girl, GIRL. And she also does books and ephemera. And so I recommend that you check her out or follow her if you're new over here on Whatnot. But this is a resin surface, and I can just go right on top of that surface like I had just shown you with the markers on top of the resin. Now, you can seal in the resin. Pebeo, which is the company that, I'm sorry, not the resin, the markers. The company that makes these particular markers is Pebeo. There are several brands of oil paint markers on the market. I've tried some of the other ones, and just these are my favorite ones for the way that they come out and they flow nicely. Some of the other ones that I've tried are a little bit drier. They have a little bit more of the dryers in it instead of being quite as fluid. But definitely try these techniques I'm going to show you with any of the oil paint markers that might be out there of the different brands as well. But the Pebeo brand also has an acrylic based, it's like a sticky acrylic sealant for these markers. So if you did want to go back over top of these markers with other types of acrylic paint, it's recommended that you seal over the surface of it with Pebeo's acrylic sealers. And they just come in a small jar like this. There is a I think they have the satin matte and gloss versions of those sealants. So that can be handy if you plan to put this down and then you want a good sealer for over top of it and then go on top of it with more paint. But honestly, I don't bother. Most of the time, I just go right over top of these with more paint. And I haven't had a problem, and I've been using them for years. So you definitely can pour resin over top of them. You don't have to seal this paint before pouring resin over it. The resin will not lift the oil paint back up. It'll stay in place. So these pieces look beautiful with the resin put over top of it if that's what you like to do. Now, I do want to show you that there are, like, for instance, these are the main colors that I use, the black and the white, just the basic red, basic blue, and basic yellow. So most of the time, if someone's going to start out, I recommend that they get that set that has the basic blue, basic yellow, basic red, and then white and black. Now, what I really like about the black, I like to get this one for the black, which is a small tip, because they come in 4 different tip sizes. This is the smallest tip right here. I think that's a 2mm bullet tip. Then there is the regular, what they call the 4mm bullet tip, like that. And there are good sets out there for this kind of 4mm bullet tip. And later I have some of them for auction if you're interested after you see how they work. And then this is the 8mm, and it's a chisel tip. So if you like to do, or you're talented at doing calligraphy, I was at a show once for Pebeo, and a lady came up and grabbed one of these, and because it has that chisel tip, she just started doing her calligraphy magic, and it was amazing. And because of the amount of paint that's in here, this is the size that I normally use, and you can buy them in the set of 3. So you get the red, the blue, and the yellow in a set. And then for me, I have to have the white to go with that. Let's see how this one's doing. There we go. So that is the largest size. That's a 15mm across that way and 5mm across the end of it right there. And I love to use these big ones in the black for going around the edge of my painting. So for instance, this painting that's done on canvas has a 3/4 inch side to it. Do you see how shiny it is? I just went right around the edge of this with that big fat marker in black, like this one right here. So it's super quick to do the edges of your paintings, or to do the edge of any kind of project you might be working on with that. I have actually used this directly on wood. If I'm working on a wood panel, I just go straight on the wood panel. It takes 2 or 3 coats if the wood panel on the sides is not sealed. But if the wood panel on the side is sealed, 1 to 2 coats is all you need of that. So it's quick, it's easy. Artists love it. Because a lot of times if you're going to submit your artwork to a show, You know, there are a lot of shows that do a request for art from artists. And most of the time they say it's okay to give them an unframed canvas like this, but the sides must be painted. So it makes it really easy to go around there with either the oil marker if you want that shiny finish, or there are also Pebeo and other brands have acrylic markers in these big fat tips as well. So if you're working on an acrylic painting, you can use the acrylic marker, the wide one, to go around the edges, and just like that, it's ready to submit. I've submitted to a lot of shows, so I know how convenient that is. Um, but back to this, with this basic set of colors, and this is for the succulents, you can see, look at all these different colors I can get just from that basic set. There's like a rich purple, these kind of aqua light greens, a nice bright green. This is more of an olive green and kind of a brown. And what I've done, I experiment a lot with, if I'm working on a subject, I want to experiment with the color mixing to get the colors that I want to work with. And then you'll notice here that I've written down what it is, what formula did I use in order to get that color. So for instance, this purple for the succulent, I used 1 white, 1 blue, and 2 red for that. So that's the parts. 1 part white, 1 part blue, and 2 parts red in order to get that kind of purple out of it. And then this, I added white to each one of the colors here to see kind of the effect. Like, what is that undertone if I tint it? What's it going to look like? And so you can see that even mixed and adding white, the colors are pretty brilliant here. You're not losing the color. The color's not turning chalky, which is what happens a lot of times when you color mix and you add white to your colors. Often you end up with a chalky feel to the color. But you can see here, these colors do not look chalky from the white oil that we put on there. And again, it was the white oil paint like this. So the same brand of white oil paint was mixed in there. All right. Oh, I'm hearing things falling over here as I set things down. Now, I had shown earlier that you can work over top of acrylic. So this is an example of a piece that I'm working on, and it's some fuchsia, beautiful fuchsia flowers. There'll be a lot more pink by the time they're done. But and I wanted to paint the background with acrylic so that you would have a very flat matte finish here with the Pebeo acrylics. And then look at, can you see the shimmer and the shine there of the oil paint? So I wanted that oil paint that's being, the paints are being mixed from these oil paint markers. I wanted that oil paint to have that subtle, like there's a matte background that pushes it back, and then the flowers really pop off of the canvas. This is canvas. You can buy canvas in a pad, and so that's actually what this is I'm painting on a canvas pad. What I love about canvas pads is that you can make lots of artwork and practice your heart out, and it stores flat, right? As opposed to when I do artwork like the sunflower on a canvas, those canvases are going to be 3/4 inch to 1.5 inches. And so if you stack those, you're going to take up a lot more room very quickly. But if you use a piece of canvas paper like this, or not canvas paper, sorry, canvas from a pad, this canvas already comes with the gesso on it. They're phenomenal, phenomenal. I love them, and I use them quite a bit. So this is an example here where it says art alternatives, and down here you'll see it says canvas pad. Now, if sometimes what you'll see is something that says canvas paper pad, all right, or it'll just say canvas paper. What that means is that is actually a paper that has been impressed on the surface so that the surface of the paper looks like canvas, but it's actually paper. So if it says canvas paper pad, then you know if it's paper, you're going to have to seal it with something. Usually I just seal it with some sort of acrylic paint. You can even spray gesso. I don't know if you knew that, but you can get gesso, which is that white primer, in a spray can. So then you can just go spray it one direction, let it dry 10, 15 minutes, and then spray in the other direction, and you are good to go with that paper. That will seal the paper up for you. Or what I usually do is I just collage all kinds of beautiful paper, ephemera, postage stamps right onto the surface of the paper, and then it's sealed, and then I can go on it with these markers. So this is actually, though, a canvas pad. That means inside here there is actual canvas, like it is. So that's what I was just showing you with that other painting. So this is loose canvas that's primed on one side, and it's ready to use, and it'll work perfectly with these paints. Now, some people, some other artists, if they are, they know they're going to sell that piece of artwork that they begin working on, especially if you have a commission. That means somebody asks you to paint something, and I am totally open to commissions. So if anyone out there wants me to paint something in particular, let me know. Um, but what you'll do is you'll put another coat of gesso over top of it. And the reason for that is oftentimes when you receive something from a manufacturer like this, the surface is not as slick as you might like. It actually has some tooth to it, and that's so that you can do many different types of effects on it. I particularly like it to be a little smoother. So if I were to do, if I'm playing, I don't worry about it. I go straight onto the pre-primed surface. But if I'm doing a commission artwork, I will coat this with at least one more coat of gesso from a jar, and then I will paint over top of it because it'll be more smooth if I do it that way. This kind of gesso leaves a lot of texture on the surface when you get it from the manufacturer, because they're spraying it on and it's taking on the texture of the canvas, and that's why it's a little more rough. Now, let me show you a couple of things here. This is blending with the various colors, and I'm going to be showing you how to do that in just a minute. And then this is dripping with the colors. So if you like to do graffiti type work, like I call my work with the scripting on it like that, I call it Asian fusion graffiti. And if you like that drippy kind of flowy look, then these markers are great for that, because once you get the tip juicy, meaning that you've shaken it and then you've pushed up and down on the tip a couple times to get the paint to flow, you can actually get it to drip by just pressing down on the tip, and pressing down on it releases the paint, and then that allows it to drip out, as you can see here. Drippy, drippy, drippies. So I love that drip effect. Now, I do want to warn you of two things when you're working with oil paint markers. That is, the work that you do with oil paint with any of the oil paint markers. The reason that the oil paint is fluid in here is because of solvents that are in there. And the solvents actually, and the oil that's in it is not your typical oil paint oil. So if you've ever painted with oil paints, the base of an oil paint is what's called a drying oil. So it's going to be your linseed oil, sunflower oil, walnut oil. There are a couple of different kinds of oils that become the base. Ooh, poppy oil is very fine and gorgeous. But that becomes the base of a traditional oil paint in a tube. And those are drying oils, so over time they dry up. It does dry, but instead of drying slowly like a typical oil paint, it dries very quickly. And that's because the oil that's in here is a mineral oil, not a natural seed oil. Okay, so they're using mineral oil. It's fabulous because it dries up quickly in like 10 minutes. You can touch it, it's touch dry, and it helps it to flow better, right, out of there. And then there are some solvents to help push it and make it flow so we can get those beautiful drips and spatters with it. However, the caveat to that is that that means it's rewettable. Now, regular oil paint, once it's dry, it is not rewettable, but these, because it's mineral oil, which is an inert oil, not a natural seed oil, it is rewettable. Um, and because it's rewettable, you cannot spray your artwork with a spray varnish. So I've had people say, I painted this. Oh, thanks for the share. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing the show and whatnot. But I had somebody say they had painted a pumpkin using these markers, and then they sprayed it with a spray varnish that you would normally put over oil paint, and it dripped and ran. And the reason for that is any of your spray varnishes are going to have a solvent in them. That's just how they're made. And any varnish for regular oil paint will just reactivate this paint and then it'll run. So you don't, that's why you want to use the special varnishes if you're going to varnish the painting. You don't have to varnish it because the fact that it's the inert um, mineral oil that's in here, you don't have to varnish your artwork. And that's another really cool thing. But if you did varnish it, you're going to have to varnish it with one of those acrylic-based varnishes from Pebeo. Do not spray it because it will run. Okay. Now, the other thing, though, about that is that if you make a painting and then you decide 2 days later, oh, you know what, I want to add a little bit more dark here, or I want to lighten that area there, you can use just a little bit of this mineral spirits that I showed you earlier, and you can work back into it. You may not get all of the color out, but you'll get most of the color out. And then you can rework your painting. You can rework your painting, geez, a year later because it's re-wettable with the mineral spirits. Now, the cool thing about it being re-wettable is you can write on a glass. So let's say I'm going to put, now you would never want to write on a glass here near the tip where somebody's going to be drinking from. But let's say you're having a party and either around the bottom here or around here, let me just put Sarah on here. Let me make sure that this marker is actually putting out paint. It looks like it, but let's see. So what I've got here is a palette pad. That's what I like to do my pumping and mixing on. So let me just make sure I've got paint flowing from here. And that means I have to pump it like this. And then I'm pushing down on the tip like this and seeing if I can get it to flow. Okay, this one's almost done. So let's see about a lot of these markers. I've already used a lot. Okay, now let me show you what happened here when I started to pump it. You see how much is coming out of there? Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's put, for instance, Sarah. Let's say I do that. The fun thing is you can have some of these markers out at the beginning of a party and just say, hey, put your name on your glass. So there you go. And then have them set the glass aside for 10 minutes. I know it's hard when you're ready to drink wine, but as long as it's away from the edge where you're going to put your mouth, you're fine. And that'll be dry in just a couple of minutes. And then let's say that at the end of the party, you want to wash up your glasses. You're going to take some of the mineral spirits. This happens to be the kind of mineral spirits I have. You can see how much I have here. I have that. I have it in a can. It's by a company called Gamblin, and it's their mineral spirits. I happen to like this one because it truly is odorless. Okay, so let me get this open. It has a child-proof lid, which means it's also hard for adults. Ooh, okay, this one is not open yet. Let me get the little bit that I have left in my tin over here, because there's a little bit left in there. That also has a child-proof lid on it, which is important because it is toxic. Like, you don't want kids around this, okay? You don't want kids drinking it or anything. So I'm going to put a little bit of it in my container here, and I'm just going to use a paper towel. Let's see if this is dry yet. It's almost completely dry. Look, it's just a little tiny bit tacky, but the party's over. Everybody's gone home. You want to clean these up so that you can put them in the dishwasher or use them. You're going to take a little bit of this mineral spirits on a paper towel, and you're just going to wipe it. You're going to wipe it right off, just like that. So I'm going to go over it a couple times like that. Okay, so now you put that through the dishwasher and you are good to go. Now, the reason that I learned about that is that one of the gentlemen from Pebeo told me that a used car dealer uses these markers on the windows of the cars and on the windows of their store. Hey there, Superpowers as CC, welcome in, welcome in. And they use them on the windows of the cars and their shop to do designs, hey, sale, that kind of thing. And then when they get ready to switch over, maybe Happy President's Day or something like that, then they just use, like I did in here, mineral spirits on a rag, and they take it off the glass and then wipe it down with a little bit of soap and water, and they go ahead and they put their new design on it. So the reason you can do that with acrylic as well, but the difference is with the acrylic, you're shaving it off with a knife, like a paint remover kind of knife, um, instead of doing it with a solution like we're doing it with the mineral spirits. It's a lot easier. And this is very resistant to the sun. So I found these are very light fast. As I mentioned earlier, I used the black on the numbers on my mailbox, and 2 years later, they still looked like I had just put the paint on. So they're very light fast for putting in a window or for putting it outside. And there we go. This will go soap and water and then in the dishwasher. So it's kind of something different, right, to do if you were going to do something like that. But let me get caught up. Hey, K Joy House, welcome in, welcome in. And Karma Stacy, aw. Karma Stacy over on YouTube says, thank you so much for explaining the difference in the kinds of between oil paints and oil paint markers, and that she certainly learned something new today. So thank you very much. I'm glad. Now, my videos will remain on Whatnot in my past shows. I think they keep it for 90 days, but I am simulcasting to YouTube. So I go back in and I do a little bit of editing of the YouTube video afterwards, and then that will be up on my YouTube channel. If you don't know my YouTube channel, you can actually just type in Tristina, Tristina, and then the word art, and you'll find me on YouTube. But here is the full, let's see, where is YouTube? There's the full YouTube name right there, as well as you can see my website. So feel free to go to my website, www.deetsart.com, and any of the courses that I've done, the products that we've used, I put a page, a supply list, or supply links on my website. So that way you can go there. It's a reference for you. And if you're like, oh, I remember, 2 or 3 classes ago, or you listened to one of my videos and you would like to buy some of the product, there are links to my website in the descriptions of my YouTube videos, as well as you can just go to my website here, deetsart.com, and then go to the supply links page, and you'll be able to see even these markers are in the pens and markers section there. So you can just click on the name of, Pebeo pens and 4Artist markers, and it'll take you to a page where you can purchase them. Let's see. Then Instagram, I'm Dietz Art. Facebook, Tristina Dietz Art. Down here, you've got on YouTube, Tristina Dietz, Elms Artist. Whatnot, Tristina's Attic. And then if you are on Whatnot, you can send tips to the people who are sharing information and selling really cool stuff for you on Whatnot. So that you just go into the little wallet on your screen, and then you're able to give a tip if you like. And I always love getting tips during the show. But if you're on YouTube, you can go to my coffee.com. So that's ko-fi.com, and put in Tristina Dietz Art. And that's my coffee.com page where you can donate if you would like to tip me, buy me a coffee. Speaking of coffee. Okay, so let's go over top of the table now, and I'm actually going to show you the blending of these, how to do that. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, one more thing. I did show you the various, I showed you some of my artworks, but before I start an artwork, just like with the succulents page where I showed you the different mixes, this is what I do. Well, this is what I do for you. To my students. I go through and I take the colors. This is the blue, red, and yellow, and there's actually white in between them here. And then I do blends, and I'm doing the blends with different brands of mineral spirits. So I do that kind of testing to see which of the mineral spirits actually does a better job in drying in a reasonable period of time, because mineral spirits will extend the period of time it takes for these paints to dry. And same with oil paints. It can extend the period of time for them to dry too. And so I wanted to see, hey, how long did it take for them? Is it a long time, is medium time, short time? So I did some testing on that. And then I also do testing like this of how far the paint will go. So sometimes I'll paint, and then there's not very much paint left on the brush here. And then this is the very, very, very last little bit that's in the brush. And that's just keep adding a little more mineral spirits, a little bit more, see how far it will go. If you're using watercolor or using acrylic, you would be doing the same thing, but with water, because they are waterborne, the watercolor and the acrylics. Where here, these are oil paints. So these, I'm actually using the Gamsol that I just showed you here. That's my odorless mineral spirits. And that's what I'm using to thin these out with. The thing is, if you're using a lot of Gamsol, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter which of the oil paint mineral spirits you use, it takes a long time to dry. Compared to if you're just using it right out of the marker, 10 minutes, it's touch dry. Okay, let's go ahead and actually come over top of the table. I'm going to show you like how I do the blending, how they work. And then I've got a panel here, and I'm going to show you doing a one of the sunflowers. So this is what's called a linen panel. It's made out of linen, which is for the most part what oil painters like to use. And they like to use linen because linen has a finer finish to it, to the surface of the fabric, than regular canvas. It doesn't matter to me, but a lot of oil painters like that very smooth look, which you can get with these markers as well. I like things that look chunky and drippy and very graffiti-like, and but some artists prefer a much smoother, it amazes me, some artists where I see a totally smooth surface and yet it's an oil painting. I'm like, how the heck did they do that? But that's a lot of brushwork plus they work on a linen surface instead of working on a regular canvas surface because the regular canvas is bumpier. All right, but we're going to be working on that linen surface when we're ready for that. And it's primed, meaning it already has gesso on it. All right, let's go ahead over top of the table. If you are somebody who gets seasick or car sick, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for just a second because I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to go up over top of the table, and that way you will be able to see what I'm doing here. So hang on a second. Let's turn the AC off because it's loud. All right, here we go. Oh, this is the exciting part, right? Hello. There we go. And here we are over top of the table. All right, let's see. Can everybody see that okay? Where am I? I'm going to get this out of here, which is my tabletop holder for my camera. And let's see where we are. Huh. Okay, hold on. Is everybody able to see? Oh, you're looking at the ceiling. That's what it is. Wakey, wakey, right? Okay, you were looking at the ceiling. That's why. So there's my Gamsol, but I'm going to be using this one instead. Let me make sure I move that up so it's closer to where you're going to see things. Let me bring this over just a little bit. Okay, yay. Nice. Now I am going to be using some paper towels, and for mixing, I think I showed you just a minute ago, didn't I, that I use a palette. All right, where did my palette paper go? Is it underneath here? Nope. Oh, I've just been piling everything up. What I did with the purple was I had used it on top of what's called a throwaway palette. So this is palette paper. It has a smooth surface on it, and I do most of my mixing on here. But if you don't have palette paper, you can use wax paper. I've used wax paper before. But for this particular project, it actually works better if you have a non-porous type of plate like these plastic plates. They work great. So you can see some of the paint that I've already used here, and believe it or not, I can pick that paint up again. So when I'm working on a project, like for instance, the succulent that I showed you just a little bit ago, and I have all these different colors that I've mixed up, I literally leave them on a plate like this, and then I can come back the next day and just use a little mineral spirits and reactivate my colors and be going back in to work just by letting it dry on here and reactivating it. It's amazing. It's amazing. So you can do it either way. You can use the palette paper or you can use a plastic plate like that. I do want to let you know I have a brochure about the 4Artist markers. So if y'all have any questions after the fact, feel free to leave me a question. I will be happy to answer it for you. I recently got a question. I have another video on my YouTube channel that talks about the 4Artist markers. And somebody had asked me a question about how long they go. And the cool thing is that inside this brochure, it tells you how long they go. So here, the 2mm goes for 685 feet or 209 meters. The 4mm goes for 511 feet. The 8mm chisel tip goes for 593 feet. And that big old fat 15mm one goes for 413 feet. So you can see they go quite a long way, meaning there's a lot of paint in there. Now the cool thing here is it shows you that there's a little marble, like a little metal marble in there. And so before you start to use one, you do have to shake it like this and then begin to release the paint by pushing down on it. Okay, so make sure when you're done that the lid goes on completely so that that tip doesn't dry out. I am not aware that you can buy these tips, but I have not ever had a problem with that. I store them this way. I store them horizontally. I do not store them this way. Like my acrylic ones here, I have in a jar like that, and I store them up like that. These I store in a container so that they are stored sideways, and that helps to keep that tip moist from the solvents that are in here, and that way it won't dry out on you if you're keeping them flat instead of putting them straight up. All right, let me see. Is there anything else like super cool in here? It just shows you the various colors and the various tip sizes for the different colors. And all of these, let me see, 3 stars, 3 stars. So light fastness, if you're an artist, light fastness can be very important. And all of these, let's see, every single one of the colors has an excellent light fastness. So that generally means they're good for 50 years or more. I know some companies, that means they're good for 100 years or more in the light fastness. It just depends on the definition for the company of light fast. But hey, if they're a 3-star light fast, that means they're phenomenal. And besides just these 3 mixing colors, it also comes in other colors as well. So this is the orange. I showed you the purple just a moment ago. There's a light green, there's a dark green. There are actually 3 colors of blue. So there's this mid blue, a dark blue, and a light blue. My favorite is the pink. Oh my gosh, I have this pink in the big sizes too because and it is so beat up because wow, I just love the pink. I use it a lot. Okay, so let's these I would call my workhorses, meaning this size. And that's because when I'm working on a piece, if I want to do blending and I want to create colors here on my palette and then put them onto my painting, I need colors that I can easily blend together, and there'll be plenty of paint in there. So that's why I use these 8mm sizes. Oftentimes I will get the really, really, really big one of white because you end up using quite a bit of white. So either that size or that. So that's the big one, or the 8mm I get of the white like that, the chisel tip. And then the metallics, I showed you the silver earlier, which looks like chrome. There's also a copper and then like an antiquish kind of gold in the metallics. And I mentioned that they come in sets. So for instance, this is the white set of an 8mm and a 2mm. Then there's also a black set and sets that you can get with the 3 of these in them. Let's go ahead though and do some. Let's do it. Okay, I'm using just this happens to be a Pebeo brush, but it's a what's called golden Taklon. So you see the brush tip here has that gold look to it. I love these golden Taklon brushes, and a lot of different companies, like this is Maker's Touch or Master's Touch from Hobby Lobby. They make a line, and that's that same like golden Taklon. I love the golden Taklon because man, it can take a beating, and it's got just the right amount to me of snapback. Okay, so it's not too stiff and it's not too soft. And that's why I like to work with the golden Taklon kind of tips. And these work great with these markers. So I have several of these colors here because I'm not sure which ones are actually full. But let me put the colors down here. You see how that comes out and just covers beautifully? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I did not prime these earlier, meaning I didn't shake them and pump them. This is just, I haven't used them for a little while, but they're right out of my box. All right, so that's depositing the paints onto a canvas. So this is a non-porous surface here. Now I can take a little bit of mineral spirits, and when I say a little, I mean a tiny bit. So I just dipped it in there, and now I'm going to wick away on my paper towel some of that. So let's take a little bit of the yellow here. and the red. And you can see, you can start to just blend them together. And now I'm beginning to get an orange. I didn't put very much yellow out there. Let's do this. I use twice as much yellow as I use the other two colors because, of course, I'm using the yellow to blend with the red and the yellow to blend with the blue. So in general, I buy two yellows whenever I'm buying paint. Let's take some of this red and go in here. And now you're beginning to see a yellow an orange emerge, just like that. Because these can blend. Now notice I'm blending right on the canvas, but I could sit here. Let's take this one out of there since there's color on it already. Now this yellow is almost empty because normally if I press down, it starts to flow and I get a bunch of color out. So this yellow, yeah, that yellow is almost done. Let's use this one. And normally I'll put the color out and it'll get nice and juicy. There we go. There's some juicy yellow. So this is using the plastic plate as a palette. And now I'll just put a little bit of red on there like that. Now, if I'm traveling, what I do, and there's your orange just like that. Let's put the orange on here. So if I'm traveling, instead of having a separate little container for my mineral spirits, I put the mineral spirits in something called a water brush. So that's a brush with a plastic tip that normally you would put water in if you were doing water-based media like watercolors, but instead I put mineral spirits in it so I can travel with it. Okay, so now we've got our orange just like that. And if I want to clean out my brush in order to do the other blending with the blue, you do it like you would if you were dipping into water, but this just happens to be the mineral spirits. Okay, so I'm cleaning. Normally when I paint, I have several brushes, and I have one brush that stays in the red-yellow range and one brush that stays in the blue-yellow range. So I'm doing blues and greens with one. I'm doing the yellows, reds, and oranges with another brush, and then I have a separate brush for the purples, which are the blue and the red together. That way I don't have to clean my brush between each color mix, right? Okay, so that got most of it out of there. Let's put a little bit of the red here. Oops, we just did the red. Okay, never mind. We'll put some of the blue on here. And then a little bit more of the yellow right here. Oh, actually, I need a lot of yellow, don't I? Okay. So there's a bunch of the yellow. And we'll take a tiny bit on there. And remember, wick it away. You don't want it to be too soppy. And we got green just like that. It's that simple. Simple and quick. Oh, so fast. Now you'll notice when I'm using the mineral spirits and then I'm putting it on to the surface here, you'll notice that the this texture is showing through. That's because using this mineral spirits really thins out the paint. What I usually do instead, and what I did with the sunflower here, I'll show you. You see how thick this green is here? I'll show you why. Because right on the canvas, I literally take the blue like this, and then I take some of the yellow like this, and I go around it. And then I take a little bit of the white. Make sure I've got some white going. Take some of the white. You can see some green on the end of the white already because I use it so much for my green mixes. Okay. And dip just a tiny bit into the mineral spirits and then wick it off because you don't want it to be too wet. And then I blend my color directly on the canvas surface like this. And that way I'm able to get the color thicker than if I put the color here and blended it on that surface. So I'm literally just color mixing directly on my canvas. Now you see how the brush is splaying out? That's why you need brushes that will take a beating. Okay, let's get just a little bit more. There we go. So the more white I add, of course, the lighter it will get. And the more, if I want to darken it just a little bit, instead of using black to darken it, which I absolutely can do, what is the opposite on the color wheel of that color? So hold on just a second. That's the way I like to create my shadows, is instead of the adding black, which is to give you a shade, I like to add the opposite on the color wheel. So here is green, right? Let's see. We're looking like right there in the green. And the opposite on the color wheel from green is red. So what that means is if I take a little bit of red and I put it in there, I will get a colorful shade instead of getting a black shade. So here's a little bit of red. I just put a little bit in there. Don't be afraid. And then when I blend it, I get this really beautiful kind of grayish color right there. It's like a green gray. And I like to get my shades that way because then it's a more colorful shade. I absolutely can add black though. I don't have a problem adding black or this dark, dark, dark. That's why I have this super dark. It's kind of like an ultramarine blue. Let's put it over here. Because sometimes I prefer a shade. A tint means you're adding white, and a shade often means that you're adding black. But instead of adding black, I like to use a color, either the opposite color on the color wheel like that, or a darker version, like a darker version of this blue. And then you can get a shadow, but it's a colorful shadow instead of being a really heavy, heavy, heavy dark shadow. Let me find some black right here. And let's put some black right in here. So this is using, notice I'm using the small tip for the black because I only want a little bit. Let's wipe off some of this so that we've got more of just the green going on there. And then you see how that's really dark and that's more of an olive if you look there. So this was adding red. This was adding that dark, dark, dark blue. And this was adding black. So it just play around with that to be able to see what your different blends are so that you can get the effect that you are looking for, that you want. All right, well, let's go ahead then, and I'm going to clean out my brush. Now, normally when I'm working like this, I only put a little bit of mineral spirits in my container at a time. I like to use ceramic containers, but I don't overdo it. I don't put a lot in there. I only put a little bit in there because that way I can change it often. If I'm doing a lot of this blending like this, you'll notice that it gets dirty very quickly. And so it's easier for me. I spend less, I'm using less mineral spirits if I only have a small amount in here at any given time, and then I can clean this out to get started on my project. Okay, like that. And then I just take and add just a little bit more. So let's do that. And now we're going to go on to the working on the project, which is the sunflower. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat before I get started on the sunflower itself. Oh, by the way, when this is, when I'm finished with a project, I use the mineral spirits to clean out the brush as much as I can. And then I go to the sink and I use General soap. There's a company called General Pencil, and they make a beautiful block of soap. It's actually a circle of soap for brushes. So then I would take this, go to my General soap, mush it around in there with some warm water, and wash out the residue. And then I can use this brush to paint again with acrylics if I wanted to. A lot of times artists, that's like a no, don't, use your oil paint brushes for acrylics and vice versa. But because this is mineral oil based, I'm able to get everything out of here using the mineral spirits. And that way I'm totally comfortable, and it works great to take it, use the Generals or any brush paint and get all the residue out. And then I am ready to go again. Ah, it's fabulous. Okay, let me get another paper towel because I messed up that last one. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I just have to grab another paper towel. If you haven't been with me before, I use Viva paper towels. And why, Tristina, do you use Viva paper towels? Because Viva paper towels are cloth-like. That means the surface does not have an imprinted design. It's more like a piece of smooth woven cloth. There is a design on the back side, but on the front side, for the most part, it's smooth. And that way, when you're working back into your artwork and picking up paint like that, you don't get impressions of a design on your artwork if you're using the Viva paper towels. So that's why I use those in my studio. All right, let's do this. I'm going to get my panel now. Okay. And so there we go. Let me just make sure everybody can see that. Okay. Let me put this aside. So what we're going to do is I like to use copper or gold in this area on the sunflower here. And you want to apply that first and let it sit and let it dry before you put all of this, like the dots and the lines, on top of it. You want it to be fully dry. If it's not fully dry when you go to do that, it will begin to lift back up because one color can reactivate the color underneath it. So even sometimes, like with the little red dots here and with the green dots here, sometimes you'll put them on and then the copper will start to come back up through them. And then I just let that dry. And then I put another little dot on top of it, and that will usually take care of it. And then, so we'll put this on first, then we'll build our, it'll be simpler, a little bit simpler than this, but we'll build the sunflower petals, and then I'll show you how to do this around the outside here. All right, let's see if I can put it away and not have it fall over again. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me get my brush cleaned up. First of all, there's still that little bit of green in there. I might switch to another brush for when I do that. Let me make sure, is that in the picture? Yes, that is in the picture. Let's put this up here. And then what we're going to do first then is work with the metallic. I'm going to put, let's do both the copper and the gold. Why not? All right, I'm going to move that up just a little bit so you can see it even better. And so you always want to shake these to mix up that. You don't want the paint particles and the solvent to separate. You want them to be together. So there we go. And then this is the copper. Wow, it's so beautiful. You see, what I like is to use these big markers to do the swath, right? It just makes it so much faster. There is a little bit of smell to these markers, so if you are sensitive to smell, you will need to do this in a well-ventilated area. There's not smell here, but there is smell from this. It's a light smell, but a smell nonetheless. Okay, are we going to be able to get this going? Ugh, I haven't used this color for a while, obviously. Okay, I can't seem to get that off, but that's okay. We will improvise and we'll blend the silver and the copper. Why not? Just for the heck of it. So what I'm going to do is put my silver, and look at this, y'all. Look at that silver. Isn't it amazing? Ooh, I just love the chrome-like effect of that silver. Is great. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over the silver with the copper, and they'll kind of blend together. So let's see. Let's see what we get. Oh, I'm not worried because it's super easy to clean this. You just take it and you put it back on that, where is it? So I always have a piece of canvas pad next to me. And so I can just do this, and that cleans off, that gets the paint to flow and clean off the tips. So it's super easy to clean the tips. So don't worry about, mussing, getting the paints mixed together. All right. So I'm kind of getting rid of a little bit of that glow by putting some of this copper in with it. So here, this is blending right on the surface instead of blending it on the palette or on the plate. There we go. It gives it a little bit of a, well, it looks like the sun's shining on it, doesn't it? Okay. This copper one is almost empty as well because I love these and I do use them quite a bit. Okay, good. That's now, see, I can just take some of that off of there if I need to. Now, we're going to want that to dry. So while that's drying, we are going to draw the, we're going to do this. So I'm just going to use the yellow, and I'm doing the, whoop, this one is the one that's almost out. I'm going to throw that away. Here we go. So this one, there. And then we're going to do another one like this. And another one like this. Okay. And then in between them, we'll put another one like this. And another one like this. Let me see, where am I? There we go. So that's just the basics. Now this one I feel is a little short, so I'm actually going to go right over top of it like this. Why? Because I'm just going to be filling this in anyway. You see there? So the first thing I do here is I go ahead and I fill this in. So it's super quick if you've got the markers to do the initial fill in. Now, here I like to leave a little bit of white so I kind of know where the edge is of the next petal. So let's do this one here. I'm leaving a little bit of white because I can come back later and fill that in. So that'll just let me know where the edge of it is. And I don't have to be too perfect because I'm actually going to come in and use a brush to refine that. Okay, so you're seeing that okay? Yes. Let's see, this one needs to just go over this way just a little bit more. Crazy, right? Make sure that, especially when I'm doing sunflowers, and I do a lot. If you're on Whatnot, you can go look in the Buy It Now, and you will see a bunch of my oil paint sunflower paintings, and they're made exactly with these markers, just like I'm showing you now. But then I finish them off in all kinds of different ways. Okay, there we go. Leaving a little bit of space there so I can see where the edge of that is. And then this one. If I were doing this not live, of course, I would speed this up, wouldn't I? So it goes super fast. But even so, it's pretty fast. All right, so I've got my basic layer of yellow down. And now let me just bring this one over just a little bit more. Bring this over just a little bit more. Now, right around this area here, I like to put some orange. So I can just take some red and go in here. Hey, Serenity Creations, welcome in. I'm showing how to use oil paint markers, in this case, the Pebeo 4Artist markers, but they are mineral-based oil paint markers, and I'm showing how to make a painting. So let's take some of the red and just put a little bit of red here. And you might go, ooh, wow, yeah, that's red. But we're going to take a small brush and we're going to use a little bit of the mineral spirit. So let me find a whittle brush. Let me see, I have a bunch of my brushes over here. Here's a good one. So here's a little brush, and I'm going to put some mineral spirits on it, but I'm going to wick away quite a bit of the mineral spirits. And now I'm just going to blend it right on my painting, right? Like this. So that's how I'm going to get a sort of a band of orange in here. But as an alternative, and something that I do often as well, is I will use that plate that I had earlier and see how I can reactivate this orange that's already dry. And I can go in with that orange. So I can either do it directly on the surface like this, or I can pick up some from here. Isn't it magic? It's just like magic. I do like to do some of the blending right on the surface, and that's because I like the fact that it's not even in color. But if you're one of those kind of people that like all of your colors to be one solid sort of even color, then I would recommend doing it on the platter first to get your color and then bringing it over to the painting. There we go. Now it dries really fast, so it's already drying on the brush. And what I also like to do is I like to sort of blend the edges. So I'm going to bring it a little bit into the copper silver mix. And that way I don't have that marker line. That's the thing. These paintings don't look like they're marker paintings per se, because of the fact that you can do this interesting blending. Okay. So now we've got an orange line around there. Let me do this. Come in here, and I see I'm not quite round there, am I? The nice thing is, though, I could always come in tomorrow if I go, oh, you know what? It needs a little tweak here and a tweak there. This paint will reactivate tomorrow with what? Just a little bit of mineral spirits. So for you who were not here earlier, we are using odorless mineral spirits, sometimes called OMS. This happens to be the Gamblin Gamsol version. There are many different versions that you can get in various stores, but it is an oil painting medium called mineral spirits. So I'm going to get that orange the way I want it, and I'm going to get sort of the shape the way I want it. Okay. Now what I do with here is I go in, I can either go in, well, my favorite thing, this is the 4mm instead of the big honking one. And I come in here, and what am I going to do? I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm going to put a little bit of red. Why? Because the petal that's in the background is going to have shadow here, right? So this area is going to be in shadow where it's right next to the other petal. So I'm just putting a little bit of that in there. And then let's go in with the mineral spirits. And it's okay that there's orange on my brush because what I'm wanting to do is sort of blend this. I don't want it to be red, I want it to be orange. That's how I'm going to get sort of um, these fiery shadows in here. And if I decide that I put too much red in, well, I just come back in with a little bit more yellow. It's so easy, y'all. It really is easy. Super simple. Now, if you want to do this with children, because it is relatively simple and it dries quickly, you see how that's dry already? They need constant adult supervision because, like I said, around mineral spirits, it's not a good idea don't leave children alone with mineral spirits, okay? Does it say on here that it's poisonous, danger, combustible, harmful, or fatal if swallowed? Keep out of the reach of children. So that's why I was saying it is fun and it's easy for us adults, but if you were to, and I did it with my children when they were 12, like 12, 13 years old. They were used to being around my art studio all the time. And so I would keep a hawk eye on them and make sure that they knew that they had to be careful, but I also kept an eye on them. So, uh, small children, absolutely not. But older children, yes, with adult supervision. Okay, so you see how I'm developing that, and there's a lot of sort of push-pull that goes in with that. And you want some subtle, let me bring that up here. So you see how you can get some subtle shading with that. And then it's also true in here. So instead of using the red, I can also use the orange. So there is an orange available. It's just the orange doesn't come. There's a nice set of either the 3 of these, or there's a nice set where there is a black, a white, a red, this color and this size, and the yellow, like that. Not this one, but this one. So it would come like that with the white and the black. But you can get open stock individual colors like this. So let's take this orange one, and I can do the same sort of thing here with orange instead of with the red. I'm using the red on these because they're in the background, and I want this to be a little punchier, meaning I want the color to be a little more dramatic, right? So let's get some of this red here and go do a little more in here because I want the drama to be right there, don't I? There we go. So what is this? This is just the red from the marker, and I put it on a plastic plate. Okay, so plastic plate, or if you have a palette, this is palette paper, throwaway palette, you can do it on that as well. So I want this to have more darkness and more drama right here than the other one. And I just work it. Sometimes I let it dry a little bit and then come back in. Right? And then here, if I'm using the orange instead, let me just make sure that I've got the paint flowing. I'm going to put some of it right there. More of it in there. So that's going to be a little bit lighter, and this I wanted to be a little bit darker. So I was using the orange here and the red there. Okay, let me put a little bit there. And so then this is going to be a little bit slightly lighter. So you can see how that's coming out a little bit lighter. Now, if I put the paint somewhere and I go, oh, you know what? I don't really like it there. I can literally take the yellow, and it's almost like erasing it. I'm just adding a bunch more yellow back in there. And then as long as this doesn't have a bunch of red or orange on it, I can just mix that back in there and bring it up to be more yellow. Now, what if I say, oh man, it's just too much? Then I can take my mineral spirits, come in here, get it wet. I won't necessarily have all the color come up, but I can literally go in. And you see how the yellow sort of stained the surface? But that's okay, because that yellow is what? My base color. So that doesn't matter, because I'm going to go back over it to get the shading that I want. You see how that works? Isn't that amazing? Woo! This is so much fun. Thanks for being with me, y'all. This is so much fun. Okay, so that's what I would do there to lift some of that color back out if I felt like I made a mistake. Okay, and then I can go back in with my marker and redefine that edge because I made a little bit of a mess there. There we go. And I would just come back in with more yellow and blend the yellow in a little bit more. All right. So this is what I call the push-pull of painting, the pushing and the pulling, the adding color, the removing color. Some people call the removal of color negative painting, meaning you're taking away color. But that's how you can do that. Let's get this brush clean. And I want to show you that this should be, yeah, this is dry already. So this part that we put on, what, 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, it's already touch dry. It's slightly tacky, but for the most part, it's touch dry. Okay, I'm going to move along. And now we're going to work on this part right here. So this is the green. And what I want you to notice is right in here, it's darker. And the reason that that's darker is that I've put more blue in this area. You want your darkest dark next to your lightest lights. So that's why I don't want just this green here. I want it to be much darker in these areas near the yellow petals. So hold on a second here. All right. So now what I'm going to do is, as I showed you, I can either, watch this. This is just so crazy. See, that is dry right there, isn't it? Let's go back to the brush that had green in it. And I can reactivate this paint. And then I can paint it right on here. But as I said, if you're using paint from some sort of palette with a mix like this, you see how watery it looks. If you want that very thin, watery look in the background, that's fine. But I like to blend directly on the surface with the paint itself. That's how I get the nice dark. So here we've got the blue. This is, what do they call this color? It's on here. It says dark blue. So geez, what is this dark blue here? Let's see what they call this one. This is the super blue. They call this one deep blue. Okay, so this is the deep blue and that's the dark blue. But now we've got the blue on there. Oh, well, it looks kind of blue, doesn't it? How do I get it to be green? I just add some yellow. So this is directly on the surface. Don't worry about this getting dirty, because remember how I said you can just take your you can take this piece of canvas that you have next to you and you can just here, let me do it for you. So you can see, you can take this piece and you can just go like this and it will take off that green, and I'm back to yellow on the tip here. And this paint is not wasted because I can just pick it up like this and then go here and start using it. But you see how I'm getting a complete change in the green just by adding some yellow. Isn't that crazy? And that's right on the surface. So I'm going to start, let's make it a little bit greener by adding a little darker green by adding some of the blue. You see what I mean about how you can travel with these and still paint? Like to me, these are amazing for plein air painting. Plein air painting means being outside and painting. Um, these, to me, if you want to quickly capture, say, a sunset or a sunrise, oh my gosh, these are so fast and easy to use to get the colors down. Then you can go into your studio and you can literally paint over top of this with oil paints. So you can get down your basic colors. You don't have messy, sticky oil paint. It's dry in about 20 minutes if you're using mineral spirits. You throw it in your car. You don't have to worry about it getting mushed like you do with regular oil paint. I'm telling you, it's amazing for plein air. Okay, so I'm going to turn this way so that I can get into these kind of most of the way down into the corners here. Okay, so I build up the basic green first, like that. And then the cool thing is you can just go in and adjust. Oh, I want it a little darker down here and a little lighter up here, or vice versa, just by adding a little bit more paint on the surface and blending it in like I'm doing right here. Don't be afraid. It's super fun and easy to do. Okay, like that. So I'm just getting the basic green in there. And then I'm going to come back and show you how I darken it a little bit. So just like here, where I picked up some of the color off of the plate. Where did I put the plate? Off the plate. You can either go directly onto your surface with the blue, or you can get the blue on the plate and then be a little more precise with where you put it. Here, let's get some more green right here. Okay. So you can see how I build up that green. Now, it's not easy to build layers here because, like I said, you have the issue with the new layer reactivating the underlayer of your paint. But if you are pretty quick when you put your second layer over top, you can avoid reactivating the bottom. But here we go. Let's put a little bit of blue in here. Right, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to darken just this area right next to the petals right here. And I'm just blending it in while everything is still wet in that area. But I could have let it dry and then come back and put it in later. It's just I find it's easier to do the blending while everything is still a little bit wet. Okay. So just by adding that little bit of blue, now I'm getting the drama next to the yellow. All right, let me bring it up and show you. So I could either use the blue directly from the tip like I just did, or I could put the blue on the plate, pick it up, and then work it into there. So do you see that now? Ooh, let me turn it around like this. You see how this has the green and this is darker in here, darker. So you've got more drama in these corners. And that makes the sunflower look like it's anchored to the page instead of kind of floating out in space, which you don't have to do that. That just is the way that I like to do it. I like to get some drama and some darkness in there. Now, if I want to adjust this green, let's make it a little bit darker over here. What I'll do, just a second, let me plug in my ear pods because it sounds like my ear pods just died. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take some of the white, and I will put some of the white on here as well. And then that will help to give me like a variation, almost like a blue-green. You see that? Or like that popular sort of sage green color. Very popular color right now. So I may want the area in here near the flowers to be a little more traditional green, darkness here, and then lighten it up as I get out to the edges. Okay. So that's how easy it is to adjust those colors. Now, the way that I'm doing it right now, and I'm doing it quickly, and I'm using a small brush, I do get brush strokes. So you're going to see brush strokes in there, which for me is okay. I like the look of brush strokes. Some oil painters prefer a super smooth finish. So if you're doing super smooth, afterwards you may want to come in with a very damp brush with the mineral spirits with a larger brush and go over top of it like this. And what you're going to find is that helps to smooth that, but not if you go over it too many times like I'm doing right now. But you can get the idea anyway. Instead of it being chunky like this, you can smooth certain areas so that you have a more uniform finish if that's the kind of artist you are, if you prefer the uniform finish. All right, let's go back in now, and I'm going to show you how I highlight this with the dots and the lines and all that good stuff. So let me show you the original artwork again that we're working from. There we are. And this is, you see how I came back in here and not only, first I did the blending. So I blended in the background. Then I came in with the marker and I actually used red to put more lines on there. I could have used orange. And then afterwards, I came in with the black to give it a lot of definition, a more graphic look, a little bit more drama. Of course, you don't have to do that. I have plenty of them where I didn't use the black lines because I like the softness that it looked like without the black lines. But we're going to work in this area right now so I can show you how I add those items. And then lastly, I'll show you how I do the spatter. So this is, like I said, this is relatively dry. Let's see if this orange is dry. It's most of the way dry. Okay, so normally I would wait. Sometimes I even wait until the next day to be sure that it's nice and dry before I go in and try to put those detail marks onto the surface. Okay, I'm going to move this up for you just a little bit more. So now I'm going to come in. Here is the green. The nice thing is they have two different color greens. So that's, let me get my plate here. And let me make sure the paint is flowing. Oh, here we go again. Got it. Oh, I didn't clear it enough. Let's see. Nope. This one is done. It's all right. I have more. Let's see this one. Okay, you know what? I remembered I did it with the little guy instead of doing it with the bigger one. So let's get this one flowing. Yeah, there we go. So here I'm going to put some, well, let's start with the red. What am I doing? Where's the red? Make sure this is flowing okay. That one's almost empty too. Woo! Let me tell you, I am hard on my markers, aren't I? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I like to do like just some fun lines in this area here. Just for fun. Let's get it flowing. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm using the tip of it instead of using the whole part there. There we go. Just for now, so you get the idea. You can use either your big markers, your little smaller markers. Now let me do some dots. So this is where I come in and I add some dots. If I want larger dots, I use the bigger one that was this size that I just had to throw away because I emptied it. There we go. I like doing these little details at the end.
I feel like it really gives a lot of interest to the piece. So what I'm doing is I'm not just touching the tip to the surface, I'm actually pressing a little bit as I'm touching the surface. And that way I'm getting a little bit of paint to flow each time. That helps the paint to continue to come out. Okay. Oh, now what can happen, like I said, what can happen is that the underlayer paint can seep up through. That often happens if there's black underneath. You'll see the black starting to seep up through that the layer that you put on top. But this one, it looks pretty good. Now what can happen is I can let that dry, and then often if I need to give a little extra punch to the color, a little more density to the color, then I will go back in and on top of a color that's already there, I'll add just a little bit more, and that will help to define it if too much of it has sort of dissolved into the layer below it. All right, so that was the green. Where's my little red one? Yeah, here's my little red one. All right, let's make sure she's working. Yes. So then up in here, I like in this orange area, I like to put either red dots or green dots or copper dots, or, you know, it's like so many possibilities, right, y'all? So I just do this with a red. Oopsies. Okay, I'm pushing down too much, so you can see a little blob came out there. That's okay. What I want to do then is I want to get some blobs in some of these other areas. If you have these markers in a hot car and then you get out of the car and you go to use them, don't take the pen and go directly to your artwork, because this can happen where you get the blots out. What I usually will do is either on my palette that I have like that, here, this is the palette paper, I'll make sure that it's flowing and I get rid of those blobs, and then I go to my surface like this. Now the reason this one's blobbing out is because it has plenty of paint in it, and I was pushing a little too much each time, and so see, the paint was flowing out. So now I'm not pushing down, and I'm just, now I'm pushing down a little harder, so I get a little bit more. Okay, oh, how fun is that? So that was the small red one right there. And I'll bring this up so you can see a little bit closer. There you go. See there? So these, if they are, if there's more paint there, of course, it's going to take longer to dry than if it's a thin layer like this, where it's already touch dry. And the last thing I want to show you then is how to spatter. Because up in this area on the piece that I did, you see the spatter that's up here? I actually used two colors. I used the Caribbean blue, which is a light blue, and then I used the regular, what they call dark blue here. And I'm actually not going to spatter on here because I still, you know, of course I'm going to go back and I'm going to continue to work on this in order to finish it. Oh yeah. Okay. I did show you earlier the paint running, right? I'm pretty sure I showed you the paint running. But if we did it with this one, if somebody wasn't here, you press down and you hold until a bunch of paint comes out. And then you go like that and it'll run. Or you can blow on it. Sometimes I'll use a straw and I'll blow on it with the straw to get it to go in the direction that I want. What you'll notice is it's kind of thick. Do you see how it's kind of thick? It's not like a water-based paint where it's thin. Now, the other thing is, if you want to spatter, you need to juice up your tip. So same sort of thing, where you hold it down and you let the paint flow. Over here on, you know, in other words, not on your painting, but somewhere else, you will get a bunch of paint out, and then you'll take this juiced up tip over to your painting, and now you just take another brush like this brush we were using. Now these are teeny tiny little spatters, and that's because I've got a small tip here. If I'm using the big tip, most of the time I spatter with this 8mm size right here. And that's what gives you the bigger spatters that were appearing on this one right here. You see the large dots? That's because I was using a larger tip and got that juiced up. But here you can see that right there using the smaller one. I can even dip back into here and get some more. And then what I like about the spatter with these markers is you can be a little more controlled. Usually when you do spatter, it goes everywhere with a normal like acrylic. And normally I'm taking a toothbrush and I'm using a toothbrush to spatter with, and that tends to go everywhere. But what I like is when you're using the marker and you just have the juiciness on the tip here, you can be a little more precise like this with getting the spatter exactly where you want it. All right, so that is the conclusion of this particular part of the show.